Okay, all I need to do is get my lights set up here and I'm ready to get started. Hi everybody. Let's see. Okay, got that. Well, I'm hoping I fixed everything. I guess we'll find out in a sec. I'm trying to get rid of that, those few moments where it seems to just get stuck and then continue on. But I think it's doing okay. It's still there a little bit. All right. Well, until I figure that completely out, I guess it's just gonna stay that way. Okay, back to the front here. So I hope I noticed that some of you had gotten some stuff done, gotten some of the background. Claudette, that's one of them. Yeah. Glad you're here. I liked your background so far. You're doing a really good job. I'm very impressed. That background was a little challenging, and I think it's challenging because you have complementary colors in it, so you have to be really careful that you don't blend too much of that red with the green and then get a brown. But of course, here's where I'm at, and I'm pretty happy with it. You can really see that branch is really starting to stand out. What I did do a little bit on my own was I kind of cleaned up a little bit in the branch. I need to get some new glasses, and hopefully that I can get into the eye doctor next week. But I had to really get up close to see some of the branch. But we are going to go over that a little bit, and I have quite a few little areas that I need to work on. But what I really want to work on, and pause on that background a little bit, is get going on those blossoms. So sometimes when you're working on a background, it's very easy to get too focused on it. And I know I've said this before on my own paintings that I've worked on. You know, what happens is you just become laser focused and you're not seeing, you're just not seeing maybe value and how the saturation levels are going to work with the forward facing image, the image in front. So I think stopping on that and working a little bit on those flowers will really help see later on what I'm going to need to do on the background, and if I need to do any more. But so far I think it's looking pretty good, so I'm pretty excited. Okay, and who else do we have? We have Jojo. Hello. Yeah, I want to give everybody a few minutes here, so I'm drinking a cup of tea, and let's see what else. It is very cloudy here. I think Claudette, you're in Chino, right? I hope, because there's Claudia. I hope I haven't mixed you two up, but it's very cloudy and we're supposed to be getting a major snowstorm. So hopefully I can get all this done. So I'm really excited to get this all finished up. Let's see what else. I think that's about it. And if anybody has any questions, just go ahead and write them out and I'll get them answered. One thing I didn't show you yesterday for everybody new, and I know that a lot of people that have already watched me paint quite often have seen me show these. Oops. Let's see, I'm looking. Okay, so I'm going to set the the color wheel aside that we did, and I was showing you my brand comparisons, and hopefully you all got a good look at that and really take advantage of some of those printouts that I have. I think they're really important. Over there. So one thing, and so hopefully you've all seen me talk about this, and I didn't talk about this yesterday, and so I'm gonna remember to talk about this today as soon as we get painting, and a little value scale that I've made too. And so I'm gonna talk about these two as we get painting. So I'm just getting my little area cleared out. Okay, so Shilpi, hi! Claudette, yes, okay, I was getting you confused with somebody else. Yeah, and it's cloudy and it's supposed to snow for the next 3 days. So I really want to try to get this done because I'm a little worried that sometimes when we get snow here, our internet gets interrupted, but I'm hoping that it won't, but regardless, we're going to be having some bad weather. And okay, give me a sec here so I can see this better. There we go. And she'll be saying the background looks awesome. It's 10 p.m. here in Austria. I don't know how you do it. But I'm glad you're able to watch. Let's see, what time is it? 1:54. And you know, I can probably start again. Oh, one thing I meant to do. Give me a sec here. I meant to retape the bottom of my painting. So I'm going to switch down. You know what I think I was trying to do is save, my pieces of tape were a little bit too short. Instead of throwing them away, I was trying to reuse them. And that was not working well. Okay. So I'll turn this up on the edge. There we go. Much better. Okay, so I can put this away. All right, let's see. So what I've done was I have squeezed out some new colors. And I also have the color from yesterday. So I've got some dried color and some fresh color on here. And I think I am going to start with that smaller petal. I'm going to start with that smaller petal. So I'm going to really zoom in. Let's see who else has joined. Oh, Jeannie and Loretta. Hi, Jeannie. Yeah, you're looking at a snowy week too in Salt Lake. I think it's all coming from California. So, hello. Hi, Loretta. So funny, I'm making a big deal about snow, and I can't even imagine living in Alberta. Must be really clear or really cold there. Okay, so let's see. There we go. See that really well. And let's see. What am I going to start with? Wait, before I start on that, let me do what I said I was going to do a little while ago and talk about these little strips. So let me zoom out a bit. And I want to show you, this is for anybody that is new. What these are, and you can make one of these at home. This helps you see what happens. It's almost like an optical illusion. When you take a really dark color, well, let's start over here with this light one. So here I have this really light color. And I've surrounded the white paper with this light color. And the white still looks white, but it doesn't look like it stands out. And then as you paint a little bit of a darker area around that white, look at how it starts to stand out even more. And then you get to this area where it's just a little bit darker. And now that white looks like it's standing out even more. And then you get over here to a really, really dark value. The reason why I am showing you this is because if you make something like this, it really helps you see that there may be areas in your painting that you're struggling with because maybe they just don't stand out enough. And if that's the case, get out your little strip right here and just help to refresh your memory about how dark an area needs to be to really make those light areas stand out. So that is really important. So I like to keep this around, and it just kind of helps to remind you, look what happens over here when you don't have enough dark surrounding a really light light. And sometimes that's what watercolor painting is about. It's about, you know, those opposites. Good value structure, good complementary color structure. And then I, believe it or not, made this value scale years and years and years ago, probably almost 20 years ago. And this is a good way to see the values. And then what I did was I punched a little hole in there with a hole punch. And what you can do if you're really struggling with value, nowadays we have, you know, your computer, you can turn your image black and white and that will help you. But sometimes just holding this up against something just to see where that value is can kind of help you a little bit. So you just kind of can move it around on your image and see how dark that value really is compared with your scale. Like I'm trying to focus in on that little area. And look, I've got it pretty dark, so I've got it at almost the darkest value I can get. And if I move it over here, you can definitely see that it's a darker value. So sometimes making yourself a value scale is very helpful. So I meant to show you those yesterday, and I didn't. So, okay, let's see. Jojo says, I have a question. I've been told that the thicker paper soaks up pigment a lot and painting will dry much less vibrant. Well, kind of yes and no. Let's compare cold press to hot press paper. Now, hot press is very smooth, so you put the pigment down and it looks very bright. You don't have a lot of control over it because the paint is not sinking down into the fibers, okay? So that's the difference between hot and cold press. It's not the weight of the paper. So your 140-pound paper, if you're using cold press, is basically the same paper as my 300-pound cold press. The difference is that 140-pound paper is not thick enough to allow those pigments to spread out, and it affects how well of the blend you can get. So it's not about the cold press. If you look at my paintings, you can see that I get very, very vibrant, saturated colors on my painting. But the way you do that is you keep painting and painting and painting, and you keep building up those layers until you finally got some beautiful saturated colors. And again, let's pull back. Let's pull back this color wheel. This is painted on 300-pound paper, and the vibrancy and the saturation I'm getting from my colors comes more from how I deal with the colors over here, using fresh paint, knowing how much water to add, knowing that I can keep building over and over and over again those beautiful colors. And then you can see right there, I've got good saturation going there. Now, the other thing about saturation on colors, it's a trick, it's a dance. It's a dance between, and sometimes I feel a little bit better. Well, I'm going to switch back to my webcam. So again, this difference between 300 pound and 140 pound, 300 pound paper is a game changer. Trust me, try it. You will be really surprised at how much better your paintings end up being. Number one, you're not dealing with the waves and valleys. If you don't paint on a block with 140 pound paper, you have to wet it, soak it, staple it down, and then if you mess up and you got to start over, you have to do that all over again and let your paper dry. Unless, again, you're using a block of 140, or you're using, yes, a block of 140 pound paper. But saturation and getting those vibrant colors, it's like this dance between forgetting about the watery colors and making sure you're building up layer after layer after layer till that paper cannot soak up any more paint. That's what helps give you beautiful saturated colors. And then complementary colors. If you look at my paintings, you're going to see that I use a lot of tricks. Complementary colors is one of them. Opposites. So purple. What's the opposite of purple on the color wheel? Yellow. So let me grab that again. So when you're painting with, say, the yellow and the purple, go this direction. Let me just go back this way. Okay. When you are taking advantage of complementary colors, so here I've got my yellow and right across I've got my purple. The minute you do that, you start creating this, it's kind of hard to explain, but your eye really starts kind of vibrating between those two colors. Same thing if you're painting with oranges and purples, or blues, I'm sorry. Those blues really help make those oranges look brighter and vice versa. Same thing with yellows and purples. As soon as you put those two colors next to each other, it makes the yellow look brighter and it makes the purple look brighter. And that's the same with using reds and greens from across on the color wheel. You put those together and it really makes the greens look very, very green and the roses look or the reds look very, very saturated. So I try to make sure that I use good value structure, making sure that you have, and let's zoom out of this, making sure that I have nice dark areas and nice light areas. In fact, I'm going to lighten up some of these areas even more. I'm going to scrub out some of these whites, and that's going to really help with the dark darks and the very light lights. And we're also using complementary colors here. So we've got these reds and we've got the greens. So they're across from each other on the color wheel. So that is helping to bring vibrancy to your painting. So 140 pound versus 300 pound, again, do not have anything to do with actually how you're painting. So there you go. Hope that helped. Hope it didn't seem like a ramble, but it's just one of those things that you just learn, as you go along and you paint. And let's see, Shilpy's asking, are you using 300 pound paper? Yes, I always use 300 pound paper. I don't like 140 pound paper. What's going on is, and I'm going to flip this on the side, this is 300 pound paper and you can see how thick it is. So that is helping me, it's giving me control over my water. It's thick enough to allow that water to sink deep down into the paper, and it gives me working time to add all my blends, to drop my color in. I don't have to worry about it drying quickly. 140 pound paper, on the other hand, because it's not as thick, so it can't sink down as far into the paper, it dries a lot quicker and it doesn't allow the color to spread out as much. That's my experience. I stand by that. Hold on. I really feel that 300-pound paper is just all around a better paper. And let's see what Mary has to say here. Debbie, show that amaryllis piece. All right. Thank you, Mary. I will do that. Okay, let's switch back to the front here and let me go ahead and grab that. And I'll also grab, let me grab this one too. Okay, let's sit back down. Okay, let's go back down, and there you go. It's a little bit warped, so let me bend it. But that's 300-pound paper. So, and you can see that I got those colors they're very vibrant. I've got some greens in the background, a lot of greens to help play against the red, and that helps increase the saturation, and especially right here in the stem. But yeah, this is 300-pound paper. It is cold pressed paper, and that is how I build my vibrant colors, is I make sure that I have a good value structure. So I have, you know, the whitest whites and the darkest darks, and I use complementary colors to my advantage to help increase the saturation. So that is the amaryllis. And here is a good example of using a complementary color palette, the yellows and purples. And same thing there. You can see, I know I'm supposed to be painting, but you know, I think this is really important to show this. So here I've got purples, and here I've got these yellows, and look at how they really play off of each other. You know, I've got some greens there, and I've got some areas here that are kind of almost leaning to red, so those are playing against each other, you know, and then I've got the purples, and I've got like these little spots of yellow here and there. And I'll zoom back out. And that's on 300-pound paper also. And my colors look very vibrant. And this is also a tutorial, by the way. But I feel like I have vibrant colors. I have areas that are very soft and pushed back. And then I've got some blues and some very vibrant purples going on right around in these areas. So, yep, it doesn't, the paper weight does affect how you paint, but it doesn't affect so much the saturation level. Now, if you want to get really saturated colors, paint with hot press paper. But my gosh, I can't do it. I can't paint with hot press. I can't get enough control over where the water's going on the paper. And well, thank you, Jojo, Barbara, and Sue. Thank you. Yeah, and you know, oh, let me pull those back again for just a sec. 3 colors, by the way. And somebody, if you've already done this tutorial, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I used Quinacridone Rose, Ultramarine Blue, and the Nickle Yellow. I might be wrong about the Quin Rose. It might have been Quin Magenta, but I'm almost positive that it was the Quin Rose. And 3 colors. So now compare that to this one that we're doing. And if I'm right that it was the Quin Rose that I used, it's the same palette. It's absolutely the same. And I'm just using the colors a little bit differently than what I've gotten here. And everybody was a little surprised on this one that I had picked for this one Quinacridone Magenta, instead of a really red or a Quinacridone Rose like right here that leans a little bit warmer towards the yellow. So everybody kept thinking, no way that this is going to get these vibrant reds. But Quinacridone Magenta is part of the printer's palette, and I chose it because out of all of the reds, Quinacridone Magenta is very, very, very transparent. It's even more transparent than Quinacridone Rose. So I chose it because I was going to be making deep, deep dark colors all throughout those reds. So it was really important that I was able to build those colors and still keep everything vibrant. So 3 colors, the other the other one, 3 colors, and this one, the 3 colors. Basically the same palette. I just switched out magenta on the amaryllis. So there you go. That is how you can achieve many, many different looking paintings with just those 3 colors. And I stand by that. That being said, eventually, as you learn how to paint more, there are paintings that I have done that I've added in, say, 2 blues. So I might use the ultramarine blue and a phthalo blue just to get a deeper range of colors. But usually I only do that if I have an extremely, extremely complicated painting. So usually I just stick with my 3 colors. And we're going to achieve that here. We are going to build these saturated colors, and we'll get there. And again, I think when I ended yesterday, I ended where I didn't feel it was looking very good. So I did off camera. I did kind of come in here and I added a little bit more color just to save a few steps, but it's not done. So I want to show you how I'm going to get some of these deeper values in there. But for now, I'm going to start on that, excuse me, that little blossom right there. So let's zoom in a little bit. That might be too close. There we go. Okay, and I have to tell you too, I worked yesterday and all this morning on trying to figure out why I'm getting, where my hand stops or my brush may stop. I thought I solved the problem, but apparently I didn't. So I have to keep working on that. And it's interesting, I know it's not my camera, it's the OBS that I'm using so that I can set up my scenes and so you can see me and then I can film down. So I'm kind of bummed about that, but hopefully I will get that part fixed for my live streams. Okay, so here we go. How am I going to approach this? Let me enlarge this flower so I can see it really well. So as I'm looking at it, I've got a lot of white areas right all in here, which is going to help immensely because look at how I came in and you can see that I got a little out of hand yesterday and came right into the white and down there a little bit. So I'm going to ignore that for now. And I'm going to take my kneaded eraser. And by the way, when you get a kneaded eraser, please don't get the cheap ones. Use the, oh no, what's the brand? Anyhow, there's a Faber-Castell. That's the best brand. See how it's nice and soft and it stretches. That way you can get rid of your previous pencil marks, and I roll it so I get kind of a little tube, and this way I'm not rubbing across my lines. So I just kind of rub it back and forth. And just pick up a little bit of those lines. Just picking up some of that excess graphite. This is another reason to use an HB lead when you're drawing out your image. If you use a really hard lead, you tend to press into the paper and the lines are really light, and then when you go to try to take off the excess graphite, it kind of digs into the paper and it's really hard to get those lighter lines lighter, if that if that makes sense. The HB graphite is very soft, so it kind of sits on the top of the paper, and it's a little bit easier to pick up. Okay, let's see. Where am I going to start? I think I'm going to start down here in those darker areas. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wet. Wait, let me think here for a minute. I'm going to wet the whole area. I'm going to wet from this line right in through here, right up against that forward petal right there, all the way down to that very first highlight. That's right along there. So that's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to show you why in a minute here. I'm going to be very careful going around that forward petal. I want a nice, crisp edge. And it's going all the way down into that leaf area, because I'm going to start with yellow. Let me see if I can't zoom in just a little bit more. Oh, there we go. It did let me go in more. Okay. So again, just right up to that highlight on this really beautiful petal that's right behind there. I don't want to lose that nice highlight, but if I do, there's a fix. Just like there's a fix for that line that I'll have to address later. I'm actually even going to wet down into that little highlight right there. I'm going to give this a sec and let it soak in. And you know what? Actually, I'm going to come up in here too. So I can see that the water is starting to sink in. I'm going to give it just a sec. Okay, let's see. Sue, I was told it's okay to use the white high polymer eraser on watercolor paper. I don't think it matters what eraser it is, what you're doing when you're taking that eraser and going back and forth with pressure, because obviously you have to do that with an eraser. You are disturbing the fibers on the surface. So sometimes, not always, but sometimes, and this really makes a big deal if you are working on that background, you'll see a darker area. You'll see an area where you can tell that the paper was marred just a little bit. So you might just want to keep that in mind. I think it's just much easier just to use your kneaded eraser. Okay, I'm going to get a little bit of yellow. What I'm trying to do is just get this first initial layer. Now I'm going to pick up. Now here's a thing that I like is that I have some fresh color and I have some dried color. So I can just pick up a little tiny bit of that dried color and I can come up right under, look at that, see, right under that petal. So why am I putting so much yellow right under that area? Well, because this is a very dark value. And if you remember yesterday when we were working on our color wheel, I knew just by looking at those colors that I was going to need a lot of yellow. And then we'll go ahead and add, on our next go around, we'll start adding in those darker values. And I forgot to show you my separations yesterday, and I owe a big thank you to Mary for another program. I've used Photoshop for years, and Mary told me about affinity and how easy it is to make color separations. And I meant to show that to you yesterday, so once I get some of this color on here, I'm going to show you, and it just might help click about how you build color with just a 3-color palette. Because basically, when you think about it, that is exactly how printing works. You start out with yellow, you have a yellow plate, and then you print that, and then you go back and you print the little dot pattern with the magenta, and then you go back and you print the cyan, which is blue. And then the only difference is that printer, or when you're printing something, you're using black. Okay, you can tell that that sunk the water on this 300-pound paper. It just sunk in so well. And since I gave it and waited and gave it some time and let it really sink in, look what happened when I grabbed that thick color. It stayed exactly where I wanted it to. So now I'm going to show you a yellow separation. And now we're back to this, and now you can look up at that image and you can see how much blue was actually in that lower area. So there you go. That's how colors are separated. I thought maybe that might help a little bit, kind of let you think about color in a different way. Okay, so I've got that yellow there. And while I'm at it and waiting for that to dry, I think I can go ahead and come up in here. And I'm going to get a bigger brush. I'm going to go with my number 4. I am not going to scrub these areas out quite yet. I'm going to wait till the very end because, again, if I scrub that out, then we're going to, it will, again, just like an eraser, it will get a little furry and the color may darken there in case any color goes over there. I'm going to try to avoid getting color in that area. So what I'm going to do, again, is I'm going to be very careful. I'm going to just avoid that petal right there. Going to avoid that. Coming right down to that yellow, that mark right there. And I guess I could have come all the way up into here since I'm just kind of adding in yellow first. It's not going to take much in this area. Okay. Give that a sec to soak in. And again, I'm having a really light touch with my brush. So now that we're actually on that area, let's pull up that yellow again. Back here, and I'm going to pick up a little bit of yellow, and that gave that time to sink in a bit. Actually, I'm going to switch to a smaller brush. I'm going to go to a number 2. So I'm just lightly dropping that yellow onto the paper. Again, I'm letting the action of wicking from the tip of my brush. I'm just touching lightly. I'm not scrubbing on the paper. And that water that's already in the paper is wicking it right out of the brush. So if your painting tends to maybe look a little fuzzy, that might be something you want to think about. I'm going to add a little bit more because it's going to dry. It's going to dry darker. There's a tiny, tiny bit of yellow right down in this area. Okay, now I'm going to leave that alone. So you can see where I deposited the yellow. And let's just go back quickly to that yellow separation. And back to this area. Okay, that's looking pretty good. I do see a little bit of yellow in this forward-facing petal. But I'm going to go ahead and let this dry. And while this is drying, I'm going to come over in this area. And I did put a little bit of yellow there yesterday. So because I put some yellow there yesterday, once I was off camera and I was looking at it, I thought, well, this is going to take quite a bit of yellow because that's very, very dark valued. It's like a very dark valued orange. So I didn't put any water down, and instead I just picked up some thicker yellow. See how thick it is right there? I'm going to grab some more and go right around that little dot. Actually, I kind of needed to bring it over here into this little area. That wasn't white, was it? Okay, now that I've got that, I'm just looking around at my image and seeing where I need to add some yellow. And this is still a little damp, that first area that I started on, and that's good because what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure my brush is kind of dry. So that there's not much paint on it. I'm going to add a little bit of yellow right in this area. So what I'm doing is I'm just making that yellow a little bit darker. One thing you don't want to do when you want just these subtle variations of color, don't just grab your color, make it all uniform, and then drop it in. All it's going to do is you're just going to have this solid block of color. Okay, so we got that. While I'm waiting for those to dry, I'm going to back out a little bit. And I'm going to take my kneaded eraser. I'm going to lighten all these other lines. Oh, you know what? You're all right. You do lose audio. I forgot to add audio in there. Well, that was really dumb. Hang on a sec. I don't know, that might be something I have to do when I'm not trying to do the painting. Darn it, I'm so sorry. Yeah, how you have to stream, not that anybody is going to be really interested in this, but when you stream and you have all these different scenes, especially when, you know, you're looking at me, and then I'm filming face down, I have to add the microphone into every single one of those scenes. So I didn't think about that. So I'll try to add that later. See, I'm just rocking it back and forth. And then I'm making sure I get another clean area. No. That line is really dark there, but that's okay. I will fix that when we get towards the end. Okay, I've got that. There wasn't a whole lot of yellow in there. Aha, I see another area. I really need to get some yellow in. Let me zoom back in. Okay. Let's see. I'm thinking, so I don't have to waste time blow drying. Might go ahead and come over here and add in the yellows there. Switch to my number 4 again. Kind of traveling around that forward petal. I'm going to get some thick color. Right under there. Right over here. And a little tiny bit is over here. And I have a nifty little trick too. Some of you have probably seen me do this, but we will put some halation around the edges so that it will really make these petals come forward. And I'll explain that later. Okay, I'm feeling pretty good about this, so I am going to go ahead and dry this. A bit more. Okay, I'll let that cool off a little bit. Let's see if anybody has any questions. Jeannie, Ah, thank you, Jeannie. It is quite the learning curve. I'm sure everybody's heard me rant about that before. It is so hard. It's kind of, I compare it to a car. You know how you don't need to know how an engine works to get into a car and drive it from point A to point B? That's how I wish I could be about this. I would love it if I could just do all this and have somebody come in and set the whole thing up and just say to them, I don't want to know, just fix it. So I have been working on this little glitch where, it goes like this and then it stops and then it starts again. I have been working on my bit rates, my frame per second, if I'm filming in 720p or 1080p, and I've had to learn all this stuff, and I thought I had the problem solved this morning, and, well, I didn't. That's okay, though. But it is a lot. It was a lot. Had I have known 2 years ago that I would have to do that, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Okay. Whoops. Yikes. Okay. There we go. Just dropped my brush. Okay. Here's what I'm going to do for this area now. I'm going to avoid, I'm going to avoid this little petal area right here, and then I'm going to wet. I'm just going to start wetting and then dropping in little bits of red here and there. So let me get this area wet. See how there's a little line there? I didn't put that line in. I should have. I didn't. See how nicely that yellow has sunk into that paper? I'm going right over the top of it with a lot of water, and it's staying exactly where I put it. I love that about transparent colors. Now this time I don't really want to go down into that green area. I'm going to go ahead and stop it right there, because I don't want that little white spot to disappear, and maybe a little bit of water right there. Okay. Now I think we all learned from my mistakes yesterday that the red is very strong. It's sunken pretty good. Now I want to make sure I don't have too much red on my, or too watery of a mixture. And again, I'm being very, very careful with that edge. Now I'm going to rinse my brush. So I'm going to pull that color gently. I just got more water on my brush, less water. Just was trying to blend, have a nice blend there. Go back to a watery mixture. Now I have a lot of water on my brush. You can see how I'm already starting to build just a tiny bit of the value of that red. Very carefully going around that little petal right there. A little bit more water. I'm thinning my paint out because the value of that red right there, it's not very dark. Got a little more red on that little spot than I wanted, but now I'm getting some thick color again. I'm going to wick my brush. Look at how nicely it stays just where I put it. Now, so what happens, and I didn't talk a lot about this yesterday, but I do try to talk about it as I'm painting. Here's an interesting thing that's happening when you paint. As the tip of your brush touches the paper, and you may not think that this is a big deal, but it actually is. As the tip of the brush touches your paper, it's wicking the color and the water out of the hairs and into the paper. And at the same time, as you deposit it and you pick up your brush and you move to another spot, and you don't go back to your water and you don't go back to your paint, it then starts sucking up water into your brush from those other areas. So you always have to keep that in mind, that capillary action, which would be a good way to describe it, it's always sucking up. If it's the opposite, if your brush is dry and your paper is really wet, it'll start sucking the color in the water up. If your brush is really wet with a lot of paint and your paper's really dry, well, what's going to happen? That paper's going to wick everything out of the brush. And that's another really important thing to think about as you're painting. See how I added a lot of color. Now my brush is dry, so what's going to happen? I can come in and I can wick up some of that color if I feel like I have too much. See, I'm cleaning my brush, and then I can come over here and I can wick up some of that color. I'm in charge of what that water and what my brush and those hairs are all doing. All right. Now that I said all that, I have to figure out what I'm doing. Okay. It took me a long time, believe it or not, to figure out how to explain that. And maybe it would be better if I explained it on a white piece of paper and show you what I'm talking about. But really, all you need to do is just pay attention to what your brush is doing. See how thick that color was. I mean, I actually picked up some pretty thick color. And now same thing, I'm drying my brush off and I'm wicking up some of the water and yet blending it all out at the same time. Now this area, it's getting dry. So I want to be very careful and not have too much water and paint on my brush, because what'll happen, as soon as I set it down, that paper's going to start, it's going to wick it right out of the brush. So now, drying my brush, and I'm just gently moving that color around. When you start understanding that, it may seem, you know, you may have to watch this 2 or 3 times, just rewind it and start again. You'll start understanding it. There's just this magical dance between the water and the paint in your brush, the water and the paint on the paper. How much is in your brush? How much is on the paper? And that, even though I've finally figured out a way to kind of talk about it and explain it, it's still one of those things that you just have to learn. It just takes a lot of time and practice. See, now I know my paper's getting dry, right? I look at it off to the side and the sheen's gone. So what does that tell me? Do not pick up a lot of watery color and go and try to drop it on that, because you know what's going to happen? That paper is going to wick it right out of that brush. It's going to deposit on the paper and it's going to spread out and it's going to create a blossom. So at this point, I want some pretty thick paint. I'm going to get as much of it off as I can. And then in this little dark area, I think I could have a little bit, have my brush cleaned. And now my brush is damp. Now I'm going right along the side of it. There we go. Now, what's going to happen? Because there's a little bit of dampness on that paper, right? Okay, so the first thing you're going to think is, oh no, you watch, that's going to blossom. But it's not. It is not going to blossom because I am making sure that the pigment I picked up was very dry. Why? Because the paper was really dry. So it's going to feather out a little bit, and that's what I want. I want a nice, gentle, soft blend. So that paper had just enough moisture in it that it's just going to start making a nice blend. And you may think all this is complicated, but it's not. And it may look like I haven't got very far, but I think it's more important that you really see what this relationship between water and paper in your brush is. So now I'm gonna go down along the side of this petal. I'm testing. Oops, let me scoot that over more. It's testing the color because I don't want it to run back into that petal. Picking up that color, just building up that edge, smoothing it out. And see, and as I'm doing that, what's my brush doing? It's picking up any dampness from the paper. So every once in a while, I may want to just hit the paper towel. The farther I am away from that edge, the more I can add a little bit of color. So that was just a little lesson about the relationship between paint and water. So I'll stop for a sec and let's see what you all think. Oh, thank you, Shannon. Yeah, if you do hit the like button, it does help promote the algorithm. Wow, really? I was the top suggestion this morning? That is so exciting. Oh my gosh, Shannon. Thank you for telling me that. Oh, that just picked me right up. Wow. What a great feeling. Ah, that's wonderful. Okay, let's see what Loretta said. So please, I can pick this up on YouTube. Oh, oh my gosh, thank you, Loretta. I don't know about being a rock star, but I I just think it's really important not to hide anything, and so that you know all these things that took me a long time to learn. Hopefully, if I explain them and it gets you to be a better painter, that is what is so important. And let's see, Mary. Oh, yep. A big thank you to Shannon for sharing that. That's wow. Thank you. Thanks, guys. That's very kind. Okay, so let's see. Let's let all this dry. Let me back out a little bit. And look at that. Sometimes I think it's important to back out and just really check it out. But look at how you're really starting to see a glow. It's starting to glow, and I'm so excited because the more we add, the more we deepen those values, the more I take time to pay attention to where I'm seeing the dark colors and the light colors, the more beautiful that petal, that white petal, is just going to really stand out. Wait till we get a little bit of blue in there. So not only, let's see, let me zoom in a little bit first. This is a good example of why I'm showing you color by color. Just like, even though you couldn't hear me on those separations. Darn it, and I thought I did so good. I'm so proud of myself this morning. All right, but regardless of that, you can see right now, let's look up there at that image or on your computer, and let's look at this little area right here, because really this is about you learning. So I can add a lot of yellow and I can add a lot of red, but the value of it is not really, really dark yet, if you know what I mean. So how am I going to get that dark? Just like we did on the color wheel, I'm going to be adding blue in there, and that yellow, red, and blue together are going to create that super dark value. Right now, it's beautifully saturated, and I can't remember why I ended up getting on a ramble about this paper, 300-pound paper, 140-pound in saturation. But I hope that really shows you how important it is to start building those colors, getting that water right. So let me get that dry, and that will give me a chance to drink some of my tea, and then we can start building up right along the edge of that blossom right there. Petal. Oh, thank you, Shannon. Yes, absolutely. Wicking it on the paper towel is exactly what the paper is doing. Water wants to go somewhere, so it's going to figure out how to either stay on your brush or get off your brush. All right, I think it's pretty dry. So I want to say something else about what I've been doing here, going slow and describing in detail exactly what's happening between the brush, the paper, and the water. And while why I keep repeating it. You know, I really want that to sink in for you, but I also want to let you know, really, I'm not some genius. I have not reinvented the wheel. I just read a lot before the internet and really tried to learn everything I could about paper, water, and pigments. And most of this, to be honest, is just an awful lot of practice. A lot of practice. Okay, so I don't want to wet this whole area anymore. I've got the basic tone. You know, I've added in, you know, I've got the pinks in there. So now what I want to do is I'm going to start doing little separate areas. So let me try to see if I can zoom in some more. There we go. Okay. I'm gonna go, let me turn up my light a little bit. I don't want a shadow, so you can really see what I'm doing. Hopefully that, you know, gets rid of a little bit of my shadow. Okay. So here we go. I'm layering that, just that rose right over the top of that. See how vibrant it is? But we're not going to want that. But I do need to we need to build up that color. So I'm being very careful around that edge, that petal. And I'm rinsing my brush. And just blend that out a little bit. What I don't want to have is a really, really harsh edge right where this comes out into the lightest value. Let's see my brush again. Now here's a good example too of where this little thing comes into play. Right now, that doesn't look very white, but as soon as we get some color around it and we darken up this area, that is just gonna really stand out. So I want to keep going with my color. Kind of the same thing right along this petal. Did you notice how it stood out a lot more once I got that color? And I can already see areas where I'm going to need a little bit more yellow. So I'm just going to soften some of this little area right here. I'm going to come and pick up some more color. What I need to do is bring some of that color right a little bit into there. And that's going to be another spot right there that I'm going to really want, that little round area. You know, it may not seem like it's important now, but when you really get to painting, it makes a difference, all these little sparkles. But if we lose some of them, and I know some of you that are watching, you now have your little Dremel tool. Which is just, to me, it's a lifesaver. And you know, there's that saying, necessity is the mother of invention. Sometimes you just have to think out of the box and figure stuff out. Okay, right along here is a dividing line. So it goes right up. Sometimes it helps too if you take your paintbrush and you roll it with your fingers to get that point back. And depending on what kind of paper you have, make sure that you are careful when you're putting down these colors because, well, they're staining colors. So if you put a staining color on dry paper, just make sure that you get a brush against it quickly, otherwise it'll create a line. So now I'm picking up some yellow. Okay, it looks kind of flat right now, right? It's because there's just red there. So now, dropping in some yellow, just a tiny bit. See how it kind of picked that up a little bit? But now watch what I do. Yes, I am going to add just a tiny, tiny, tiny drop of very, very watery blue. See that? You almost can't even see it. I'm going to wick some of it off. You may not be able to see this, but it just toned down that pink a little bit. Now I'm going to pick up some more of that rose. I'm going to pick up a tiny, tiny bit more of that blue. And it's completely toned it down. And now it looks like it's pushed back a little bit into the background. Just picked up a little bit more red, or that Quin Rose. And you know what? Here's a place too where I lost that beautiful highlight, and that's okay. I will get that back later. I probably went a little heavy on that magenta, but I'm going to come over there and pick up a little bit of that blue. I always try and keep in mind too that when I'm painting with 3 colors, that it's so important to have a little bit of each in an area. See, and that's already getting dry. So let me try this just a little bit. Okay. So I'm now is the test. Let's darken that value. It's gorgeous and it's beautifully saturated, but I'm looking at my image, and you know, if you want to leave it that way and you want everything really bright, you can. The way I'm painting is not saying that you have to look at an image and follow it exactly. I'm trying to teach you how to get these effects. So what I want to do is I want to grab some of that blue. I'm going to grab some of the red. A little bit more. I just want to make plenty so I don't have to keep mixing it. It's not really a big deal, but kind of is when you're teaching. Okay, so I've made a nice darker purple, and I'm going to You know what? Actually, I think I need to thin that out a little bit. Right there. Okay. Now watch what happens. Not much. Let's do that again. There we go. Okay, actually, probably what it needs is a little bit more red. Okay. There we go. I'm going to pick up some more red. Let's see. You know what? That needs a little bit more yellow. I'm rinsing my brush. Just going to pick up. There we go. Just picked up some very, very strong blue. Look at how pretty that is. I mean, you know, you could have just grabbed a tube of black or Payne's gray and then it's just going to look flat and really boring. And instead, you should be proud of yourself that you've created a dark value from the colors that are on your palette. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and pick up some of this yellow. See, now that color is starting to sit on the surface of the paper. So I'm taking some yellow. I want to be very careful. Go right along that edge so I can brighten up that edge of that color. Darn it, it went right up into the petal. So you're probably, at least I hope you're not, I hope this is sinking in, probably thinking, wow, that's an awful lot of work for that little tiny area. But watch, let's zoom out. So now look at how we're starting to build those values, and now look at how everything else is kind of standing out. It's dark, and it's a dark value, but it kind of glows. I just think it's really beautiful. That's what you want. That's what you want to aim for. Now let's go. I'm adding, see how thick my red is now? Going right over the top of it. Just kind of feathering out that color. Need a little bit more on this side. And I noticed there's a little bit of blue right under that little area there. Just had a little touch of blue. Let's see. I have a number 2. I am going to switch to a 0. So I want to get all these beautiful little petals in there. Oh, thank you, Mary. Yes. Quin Magenta is a good substitute for rose. The only thing that's going to happen is your colors are going to lean, they're going to be a little bit cooler. Magenta is a much cooler red. So what that means is so let's say I had have used magenta here, I wouldn't have got, in other words, that had been magenta. Magenta leans more towards blue. And what happens when you mix all three of your colors together? It dulls them down. Not mud, dull. So if I want to keep really vibrant colors on this side of the color wheel, I would use a warm red. If I wanted to have nice, vibrant purples, I would use a magenta, because a magenta leans towards the blue. So it has less of a yellow in it. So I'm going to get really vibrant purples over there. And it's a lot easier to understand that if you just play around with it. I need a little bit more. I needed a little bit more of that blue. Wow, that got really dark, didn't it? That's going to look beautiful against all those lighter petals. That's going to really make that petal come forward. Okay, I'm going to stop messing around with that. Oops. Here we go. I'm thinking, everybody. Thinking what I want to address next. I know what I want to do. I want to I was trying to find a place where I thought would be good for a cutoff. Here's that spot where there's like just a little circle of yellow right in there. I'm going to try to blend that out a little bit. There we go. And you know what I noticed? It needs a little bit more yellow. More yellow. See, I'm starting to build those little tiny petals hidden in there. A little bit more red. More yellow. I'll have to come back and put, there's a little bit of a dark value right in there, and I'll come back and put that in a bit. See how I just softened that edge. And there's a little bit of yellow. And a little bit more red. Now I'll be able to come down into this area once those other areas dry a little bit. What's going to be fun is putting that shadow on that little petal right there. But so I've got a lot of water in that area, so I think I'm going to go ahead and give that a little break. Let it all sink in. And instead of drying it, I'll go ahead and come up on this petal right here. And I'm going to use my number 2. There's something interesting going on right on the top here. And honestly, I think it's like how maybe the petal opened and maybe a bug was nibbling. Not exactly sure. It's something to that effect. Now, here's what I love. These are my favorite parts of flowers. There's this gorgeous edge right here, and it's kind of up and down and up and down. The shadow area. So I'm just kind of adding water, not a whole lot. I'm adding more water into these areas. I want to kind of stay away a little bit yet for over there because I want to build a really gorgeous, beautiful shadow edge there. Okay, I'm going to put that one down. And no, wait. I'm going to go back to my number 2. I want some watery, very, very watery red. And now I'm going to grab some of this purple that I made. I'm going to make it really watery. Maybe a little bit more. Maybe a little less watery. Oop, that had too much blue in it, so I just picked up some red and I'll just drop that right in there. Now a little bit of red. My water at this point is really sinking in well. That needs a little bit purple, some purple violet in there. And especially as we start getting right up apply that shadow. And every time I look at an area in my painting, I see everything. I see yellows, I see the blues, I see the magentas and the yellows. I really, really, really pay attention to all the different colors within the shadows and the petals, or just anything, you know, even when you're talking about the branches, all the different colors that you see in there. I'm going to quickly come down here and just soften that. Take out some of that color. Okay, so it's starting to really sink in. I'm pulling the color away from the shadow and down. Grabbing just a tiny, tiny bit of that purple color I had. Paper was a little dry there, but that's okay. Go back to some red. See, I definitely have to, that edge has got to be fixed. You can see right there where I have to scrub it out, right along there. Aha, there's a beautiful shadow right down in this little area right here. So I'm adding some water, and I'm going to add it way out into this part of the petal. Even though I don't really need it to go that far, I want that to be a nice blend. So I'm going to drop in a little bit of yellow. And these colors are subtle. A little bit of that purple. And I just have a nice tiny shadow just right underneath of this petal. So we're getting there. I think I'm going to let it dry. Yeah, even down there, looks like I brushed into the petal. So I'm looking at what everybody's talking about with the colors, and I'm so glad to hear you all talk about the pigment identification number. Good for you. That's how we need to find colors. It's just the paint companies make it so hard. They really do. Let's move this way out and see where we're at. Oh, yeah, look at that. That is really going to pick up. It's going to be beautiful. Yep, I'm liking it. Seems like it took forever to get this far, but it's getting there. What I think as I'm looking at this, and I think this is important. Let's back out a little bit more. And I've said this before. You've all heard me say this a lot. Value is the workhorse, but color gets all the glory. And it's very true. But what is really helping this whole painting just make these flowers just come forward and just pop, just be like, wow, it's because of those completely darkened values. Look at the difference that made with that background. Now, when you look at this, that background, because it isn't as saturated as these front colors and as dark valued, except for, maybe right in there, look at how it's all pushed away. And these flowers are just coming forward. It's just, that is important. It's so important, this value. If we didn't have those beautiful values, we would not be getting this effect. It would just be looking really flat. So I'm pretty happy how that's turned out. So I think what I want to do is give this a little break and let's go work over there. And honestly, there's no rhyme or reason for that. But when I'm painting, I don't honestly know how some people can completely paint an area. It's not that I get bored, but I just feel like I need to jump onto something else. And then maybe I might see something that I didn't see before that I can come back to. So I'm going to come back over to this little area right here. So I'm going to take some red. See, I've kind of made an orange there. Let's add a little bit more red. Maybe a little bit more yellow, just thickening it up. But, okay, so here's something important. Let's zoom in a little bit more if I can. Okay. Here is where sometimes you can get stuck. A lot of times you would look at that and think, oh, I need burnt sienna. Nope, you don't. You make your burnt sienna. So I've made kind of an orange. So I'm gonna grab a number 4, and I'm gonna take some of that yellow because I want that yellow to stay vibrant, or that orange to stay vibrant. So I'm taking some yellow and I'm gonna make burnt sienna. I'm gonna take some of that red. Now, the interesting thing about burnt sienna, I love burnt sienna. It's a beautiful color. I've painted with it. This way, when you make your own, you're in harmony because all of your colors have all the same characteristics. They all are working together. You know that because that's what you did at the beginning when you started painting. So I've made an orange. Why did I make the orange? Because that's what burnt sienna is. Burnt sienna is a very, very dulled down version of orange. So how am I going to dull that burnt sienna down? That orange. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to grab some blue. Now, if you've never done this before, you may do too much and you may think I've ruined it. Nope, just keep going back and forth between these 3 colors. They're not going to make mud. You're not going to mess anything up. You're just going to keep adding a little bit here, a little bit there. Look at it like you're cooking and you taste your dish and you're like, oh, don't have enough pepper, need more pepper. Or, oh gosh, I need some salt. It's kind of the same thing. Okay, so it's a little bit duller than that orange, but now let's really turn it into a burnt sienna. Now I'm going to grab a piece of paper so you can see that. I'm going to add some water. Oops, let's go over here Ta-da! Look at that beautiful burnt sienna. And it's all transparent, so all those colors are going to mingle. Now let's see what happens when we add a little bit of yellow to that. Let's drop it in there. Oh, okay. Nice, right? Adding just a little bit of yellow. Let's add even more. It's kind of leaning almost on the yellow ochre side. Now let's add a little bit more red to that. Let's add some more blue because I'm starting to run out. I didn't quite make enough. Okay, now let's pick some up, put it over in this area. Let's really scoop some up. See how it's just a little bit different? Just a little bit more on the cool side. I still don't have quite enough in there. Add a little bit more blue. Now I got pretty dark. So if you get to that point, you may think, I've totally messed it up. No, you haven't. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to add red. Okay. Now I'm going to grab some yellow. There we go. That's all it took. And look at that. See the beautiful colors in there? You can see the reds and the yellows, and just made a lovely brown. Now if I add a little bit more blue, let's add it over here into the color. Now what do I have? I've got a really dark brown, and that's all it is. It's just, you're taking a little bit from here, a little bit from there, a little bit from there. But look at how glowing and beautiful that burnt sienna is. So with that, I'm going to leave this sitting here, and I am going to go warm up my tea, run to the bathroom, and get some clean water. So I will be, before I do that, let me zoom out. Let's see, I was trying to make it so that you could also see the burnt sienna. There we go. All right, let me scoot that over a little bit more. Okay, let's see if I can zoom in just a little bit more. There we go. Okay, I'm gonna pause that and I will be right back. Okay, one more thing and I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. Oh, that was a relief. Okay, so let's see. I hate saying, wow, this looks really great. You know, it's so funny. It's like you're really, it's one thing when you're really giving other people compliments. It's a total another thing when you're doing it to yourself, but this really is looking great. So let's see. I just want to make sure just check and see if there was anything I missed or, okay, you guys are just talking about color. Okay, cool. All right, I'm pretty happy with this. So, I hope you all understood what I meant about that beautiful burnt sienna. So let's go ahead, and now that I've mixed it, let's zoom back in. There we go. And I'm going to go ahead and finish that. What is that? It's a bud. It's a bud. That's what I'm going to call it. Okay, I'm going to use my number 2. No, I'm going to use my 0. And I'm going to stay away from that little yellow highlight area right there. I'm going to try to stay away from those little circles of light, even though they're not quite light. That value, like total white, I don't want to get any paint on it right now. So I just want to add some of that. I don't know what I was just saying. Oh, God. I totally lost my train of thought. Let me start all over again. Okay, I kind of painted around those little highlights right there because when I'm looking at the image, they're a little bit lighter than the surrounding area, so I just don't want too much color to flood into them right now. And I'm staying away from that edge. Okay, so what I want to do, I'm going to actually grab... I had my brushes in the wrong place. Okay, I'm going to grab my number 2, and I'm going to wet this a little bit because that was starting to dry. So one great thing about making your own burnt sienna is now I can look at this and I can say, how do I want that burnt sienna to lean? How do I want that color to lean? Well, as I'm looking at my picture, there seems to be, kind of leans a little bit more to the red. So let's see what happens when I add red. I'm going to pick up a little bit of it and drop it in there, and nope, maybe a little bit more yellow. Actually, I'm pretty impressed. That blended out really nicely. Okay. All right, a little bit more red. There we go. I don't want it to be too dull. Maybe more. There we go. It's still too brown. So I'm gonna add some more red and some more yellow. Look at that. Just what I wanted. I'm going to pick up a little bit more yellow. And look at how nicely it's blending over to the side there. And you know, really, for some reason it bugged me. I thought about that. I thought about this all night. I should have just wet that whole thing and then started dropping those colors in there. So, and obviously I'm not going to finish this today, but I think hopefully you've learned a lot of important stuff. But I want to take a branch on a piece of paper and show you a better way to, I just wasn't very happy with how I taught that. I really wasn't. Okay, let's get some yellow. Just added some yellow in there and right down there. You know what's interesting is you look on the other side, there's some blue over there. And you know why there's blue over here? It is the reflection from those leaves. The sun's reflecting and it's causing that shadow to be a little dull. But now back to this yellow-orange here, dulled down yellow-orange. That looks really pretty. So while I'm there, I'm going to take some of that purple that I made. I'm going to add a little bit of blue to it. Add even some yellow. And honestly, this is the #1 reason why your shadows end up looking dull, is because there's not a combination of all 3 colors in there. That's starting to look really good. Okay. So let's leave that alone and let's come back over to this area right here.
Okay, I found this on the web for this area right here. Check it out.
How did that get turned on? Sorry about that. I must have hit a button. Okay. I think before I go any farther, that's bugging me a little bit. All those edges right there. So I'm going to take my #2 Wonder White scrubber brush, and I have everything in the links. The only place I can find these from is Dick Blick. They're my favorite brushes, and I'm not shilling for them because I don't get anything from them. I just think that they are the best scrubber brushes out there. Very soft, but firm, and they have a nice rounded edge to the top. You can tell I've been using these for years. Here's one that I've had to glue back together. I've cut the end so that I can get into little tiny places. And I need to get some clean water again, so because you don't want to scrub any areas out with colored water. So I'll be right back. Okay, nice clean water. I have my scrubber brushes. I'm going to use the one. I'm going to be really sad when this one is finally gone. I'll have to make a new one. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm taking some water. Let me zoom in. There we go. Let me zoom in a little bit. Or maybe I've zoomed in as much as I can. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to hold it right there. Take a sip of tea. Boy, I'm so nervous. I think I'm starting to get a cough. So I've got some herbal tea and I'm really worried about that. It's kind of hard to teach when you've got a cough, but hopefully it's just the weather. So as I was scrubbing, I'm over here. I was scrubbing a little bit harder than I normally do because it's going to be pretty white there, so it's not going to really hurt anything. And so you're probably thinking, well, you just told us not to be careful with even the eraser. But this area is going to stay white. There's really not a whole lot of color in there. There's a little tiny bit, but not enough that me very gently lifting up some of that color off the surface is going to make a big deal. And right here, it's almost completely white. So I really do want to get that off. So let me turn this. Wait. Let me stick there. Oh no, let's zoom out a little bit because I didn't like being that close. And that is, when you think about it, that is pretty close. So, okay. All right, I'm going to turn it upside down so that you can see it from this angle. Just using a tiny bit of water. I'm being very gentle. And that's all it took. Oh, that looks so much better. I just need to get it right off in this little area. It doesn't take a whole lot of pressure. My water's really clean. Much better. Even up in that little top area, but let me just make sure I go along the whole edge. Actually, I'm coming in even a little bit into the background. Why? Because my pencil marks were a little dark. So I'm just lifting up those pencil marks. And it's also helping to soften that edge. But if there's anywhere else that I've done that, I'll wait until the flower's finished. But this flower is getting close to being done. Boy, did I underestimate how long this was going to take. But you know what? In some ways, I guess that's a good thing because I've filled in a lot of info about how I do things. That is looking so much better. Okay, I'm going to turn it around. And that looks much better. And I'm going to soften a little spot right there. Okay. I'm going to leave that alone. And well, I was going to start there, but you know what? Let me just go over there. Let me just go right here and very quickly cover up those little white spots with a little bit of the Quin Rose. So hopefully now you can see why I waited and kind of painted around them, because they were just, it was a little bit pink right there. Trying to make sure I get all those beautiful reflections. Okay, so good there. Now I can come back over here, but you know what? I think before I do this, let's get this a little bit darker. So let's mix in some of that. Let's make some of that violet. So here's what I'm going to do. I am not going to wet this little petal. Okay. I'm going to do this dry. Pick up some rose. I'm going to soften this. Add some more rose. Had a little bit more water in my brush that time. Now I keep picking up water, just feathering out. I'm going to pick up some yellow because I'm seeing some yellow right there. Maybe not that much. Okay. And look what I see a lot of down there is blue. So I'm going to pick up some of that ultramarine blue. Let me add a little bit of pink to that. My rose. Maybe a little more. It's a little too watery now, so now I have to thicken my color. A little bit of my ultramarine blue. There we go. up some of that violet. Back to some of that rose. That's it was a little much there. Maybe a little bit more, some of that already mixed violet. Let's get it down right in that dark shadow area there. Now, I kind of need to blend this little dark green area up and into that blue. So what I want to do is I'm going to come over here. It's plenty wet, so I have a little bit of time. So I'm making a really dark green there. Okay. So now I'm going to pick up some of that really dark green because I want it to blend out nicely. Maybe pick up some yellow so I can get it to blend into this lower branch. So that's a little tricky, but it's doable. Now maybe pick up some of that rose. Maybe a little bit more of that green. See how it's nicely blending out? Oh, I just added green over there into my yellow. Now let's go back to some rose. Now some blue. Look how beautifully that's blending out right there. Okay, see, I didn't want that color to go up in there, so I just lifted some of it up. I'm just going to add some red right over the top of it, and I saved that. Now, same thing, a little bit of blue. More red. Just trying to balance everything out. So now I think I'm going to go to yellow. So I don't want that to have harsh edges. So I just adding that yellow right in there. More yellow. More yellow. Let's add some of that darker green. And let's add some red. Let's add some of that burnt sienna that I made. Let's go back and add some more green, running out of it. Let's cover over that little area. That's much better. So the interesting thing about this little area is the blue that I've chosen, that ultramarine blue, because it has a little bit of red in it. So it's, when you go and add the yellow, it's not as vibrant of a green. If I had have used a phthalo blue, which has a little bit more yellow in it, it would have been a really vibrant green. So what's great about this is that because I have these two complementary colors next to each other, it has really made that green stand out. So I'm pretty happy about that. I think this is looking really good. So let's see. So now what I want to do, kind of fix this edge. That's where that area right there I wanted to avoid, because that is where that beautiful highlight is, and I really want to make sure that stands out. I kind of missed it a little bit, but I'm going to fix that. I'm just coming up into this area. Now, this is kind of like a gray, so I'm going to take a little bit of that purple, put it right there, and just drop in a little bit of the yellow. I need to make a very watery gray. So basically, that's just the combination of those two, and with a little bit of the yellow added in, I just have basically made a gray. But I wanted a little bit more on the blue side, so I just added a little bit more blue. Maybe a tiny bit more blue. And now we've got that little petal going on. So let's add a little bit of that rose. Let's add a little bit more rose. Now what I'm doing is kind of rubbing against that edge, kind of soften it up a little bit. Now I want a little bit more blue. And let's drop in some of that gray right in there. Actually, and a little bit more yellow. Just turning out beautiful. I'm so happy. Okay, let me let's see what everybody's saying. Mary, your throat is probably tender from all the talking you're doing. Yeah, it is, but oh my gosh, I'm just so scared of having a cough. I mean, I could teach sick, but you can't teach when you're coughing. That would really stink, right? Let's see. Let's see. Oh, so Jojo, I just started the background and it's so horrible. My ultramarine is very granulating and it looks, interesting. Okay, great comment. Let me back this up a little bit because I want to kind of mention that quickly. Oh, look at that. Isn't that amazing? I don't even have a very saturated green, but look, you can see it's almost a glow. It's almost like a backlit glow coming up in that green. That's lovely. Okay, so you know how we were talking about colors and companies, let me speak English here. The least granulating ultramarine blue that I have ever found is mgram. So even when it comes to a granulating color, it depends on how much they grind that color. And you've probably, any of you might have seen, they have these giant, heavy, solid metal wheels, or even stone, and they grind, and all the pigment gets ground. Well, some companies grind their pigments more than others. So it just kind of depends on what company you're buying from. But I find mgram to be the least granulating. Now, like, I can see a little tiny bit in my background, but you know what? I think that is what just makes it beautiful. In fact, let me show you just quickly here a painting I just finished. Okay, this painting, I don't know if I could zoom out anymore. Let's see. Oh, I can. Okay. So this is a painting I just finished. It's obviously, I have it turned. So here is some of it. I did this painting with this palette. The Nickle Yellow, the Quinacridone Rose, and the Ultramarine Blue. And I love that blue granulates. Let's look up close at this. I want you to really see. Look at how it actually is really beautiful right in here. It just granulates just a tiny amount, but just enough to add a little bit of texture and some life into some of the colors. Yet, when I go up here into some of these more muted colors, more grays, you can't really see any granulation at all. And then, when you come over to these really dark areas, let me back that out just a little bit, might be a little bit easier to see. You can see how I've really got some glow in there, and I've used very thick amounts of that ultramarine blue, but you know, it's not all that noticeable. It is a little bit, but I think that's what's really exciting, is how it ends up blending out with all these colors. So backing it up, this was like a 18 by 24, so it's pretty big. But so this, I created all this and got all these nice, gorgeous, glowing colors all from this palette right here. Okay, so I'll put that down. And actually, it's kind of nice to take just a tiny break as I'm painting. So what did I just do? Here we go. Okay. So anyhow, that is really coming through. So you can have a lot of colors. You can have as many colors as you want. But when you focus on this limited palette, it's almost like it forces you to problem solve on your own without going and picking up another color. So that's why I paint like this. I just love the effect. All right, this is looking beautiful. Everything feels pretty dry. Let me hit it with a hair dryer one more time. I actually can't wait to go over there and do that little, I don't know what that is. Somebody who knows biology better than me, let me know. Stamen or pistil? Okay. I'm very happy with this. This is just, that glow is just really coming through with those yellows. So, all right, what do I want to do? Let's get this baby finished. It's almost there. I'm not going to quit until this is done. Okay. I'm going to wet this area right here. That's almost too much water. Pick some of that up. And then move it around. See how it's wicking right from my brush. Oh, you know what? Let's zoom in a little bit more so you really see what I'm doing. Okay. There's the edge of that shadow. Ooh, that's going to look so neat. Okay, whoops, water. Okay. Isn't that wonderful that I can go right up to the edge and I don't have to worry about that color bleeding because it's sitting on the top of the paper. It's staining, so it's sunk in really well. That's awesome. Okay. So here's what I did. I picked up some blue. Just blue for right now. Actually, the nice thing too about transparent staining colors is I can soften that edge just a little bit. So that's what I've been doing with my brush, is just softening that edge. Now I'm going to come right in this area. Just add a little bit more blue there. Now I'm going to pick up some magenta. Or, I'm sorry, rose. I'm going to pick up some rose. And right down in that spot. And then I'm going to make sure my brush is kind of dry. See how I just softened that little edge there? And let's put a little bit up in this area. Let's pick up a little bit of yellow and let's right along this edge. And then I'm going to feather it out. I'm going to go to, what do I need to go to? I'm going to go to my number 4. Now, don't make this mistake. There's been times where I've gotten a little lazy and I haven't washed my brush out completely, and I just want to put a little light amount of yellow or color somewhere. And yeah, transparent staining colors really cling to your brush. So this is dry, but it's yellow and it's so light, I'm not going to have any problems blending that out. You can barely see it, but there's enough yellow there that I wanted to get that in. Same thing over in this area. So dry paper, just a little tiny bit of yellow. Isn't it great when you're just going back and forth? Yellow, blue, red, yellow, blue, red. What do I need? Do I need more blue here or do I need more red? Instead of having a giant palette with everything on it, and then you're just stuck and you just can't figure out what you need to do. Wait a minute. There's actually a little bit of yellow all the way down into there. And while I'm here, I just picked up some yellow. I'm going to go right along that side. So that way that edge of the petal doesn't have this flat look. And then once it really dries, then you're going to see what I'm going to do. And I'm also going to do that down here a little bit. And you're going to see how that red and yellow combine and create a little bit of a halation. I don't know how well you're going to be able to see it. And all that really is the effect of two complementary colors coming together. So basically there's a lot of greens in here, and so I'm adding in a little bit of the oranges and reds so that it kind of complements the blues and the greens, and then that really helps that petal kind of just become a little bit more vibrant. It's a little bit more vibrant on my screen, or on my actual paper. Okay, and while I'm waiting for that little area to dry, again, same thing over here. See how just adding a little bit of that yellow, it's just softening up that edge. And now what I'm going to do, it's a tiny, tiny watery amount. To be very careful when you're doing that. Pick up some yellow again. And look at how a little bit of that yellow-orange right there and there just really makes those petals come forward. Okay, let's zoom out so you can see it a little bit better. See how all of a sudden there's kind of this glow around this petal. Adding a little bit more yellow. And now it feels like it's forward, but it's softened just a bit. Now I'm going to come down in here and add a little bit more red. And a little bit more violet. Just kind of swipe up. Maybe a little bit more of that gray right up and through here. Just kind of softening. Just adding a little bit more rose. Now I'm going to pick up a little bit more yellow. Just right lightly around the edge, and that'll kind of bring out that highlight. All right, let's back out just a little bit. So, isn't that interesting? I mean, you can really barely see that But the overall effect, once you add that halation around the outside, it just makes all the difference. It really does. So that's looking pretty good. I'm pretty excited about that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of this green and come back over to this little area right over here. Now blue, because I see blue up there. Oh, let me zoom in. You can see that a little bit better. Maybe a little bit more. Okay. And a little bit of water in the center. Maybe more blue. Now you know what I need? A little bit of pink right down here. And you know what I'm going to have to do? I'm so bummed. I kind of lost that little highlight right there, which was too bad. I'll have to go back and fix those. A couple little things. It's not too much, but it's definitely getting there. You can see a little bit an area where I need to soften some of that red and where I need to add yellow. So I'm just kind of looking around at this little blossom. More red. More yellow. It's the little details. I don't know what it is about those little details. I just love. And you know what? I'm gonna take my tiny scrubber brush. I'm not gonna scrub. I just noticed that this didn't blend out very well there. I'm just kind of fixing it. Just kind of touching the paper. Just dabbing at it. Okay, that's a little better. So I'm going to pick up some of that violet. Now some yellow. Water, let it all blend out. More yellow. There's really a lot of yellow in that area. More red. Let's see. And let's throw in a little bit more blue right along that edge. You know what that needs? It actually has this red kind of streaky. There, that's better. Much better. Ah, I love it. It's turning out so good. And that's hard for me to say too, especially when I'm teaching, because it's hard to get it to look really good. You know, you're so busy talking about it. Okay. Oh, yikes. I'm gonna pick up a little bit of blue. Well, that was a little bit too much. Let's add some yellow. Well, that was almost ruined, wasn't it? Here, let me get my little tiny scrubber brush You know what, I should have wet that first and I didn't, and look what I did. Okay, now I'll have to let it dry, wait a little bit, and then come back to that. Let me hit this with my hair dryer. I just... Shelby, that is so funny. At the top is carpels, and then female gametophytes, and the bottom is the stamens. Thank you. You learn something new every day, right? Let's back this out a little bit. Okay, that's plenty dry. Okay, remember I said I was going to come back to this area. Zoom back in. Okay, grab some pink. And a little bit of that magenta. Magenta. I don't know why I've got that on my mind now. And a little bit of that blue. A little bit more. Oh, kind of came over. That's a good example of what happens when it's not as dry as you think it is. So just soften that up. Okay. I'm going to dry that one more time. Whoop. Okay, a small brush. Yes. Want my 0. And I'm going to grab some yellow. And I'm picking up a little bit of that gray. Oops! I suppose it would help if you could see what I'm doing. Boy, I'm really struggling with that little spot, aren't I? Okay, I'll leave it alone for now and come back to it. And I obviously have to pick out some highlights in here. I've lost some of the highlights, but you know what? I really need to get that area dry. So let's go ahead. I'm going to use my number 4. This time I am going to wet this area. And very lightly soften that little area. Okay. Miss some of the center. I think this is the last thing I'm going to do, and then I'm going to call it for today finished, and then work on it some more tomorrow. Okay, let's give that a second. What I'm going to attempt to do is get those beautiful little veins that you kind of see. Now we're coming over into some Now watch how I keep my brush at the top and work my way down so that I don't wick a big spot of color. So same thing, looks like there's like just some little veins. Didn't mean to go that far, but... And then there's almost like some little shadows over here. They're kind of bordering on gray. Try that. Yes, Claudette, there is a lot of color in there. And it's like, once you start seeing, once you start thinking about color as how much yellow it has, how much red it has, how much blue it has, that's really how you start thinking. Your brain automatically says, yellow, blue, or red. This area, yellow, blue, or red. More yellow, more blue. So...
Okay, I found this on the web for yellow, blue, red, yellow, blue soul. Check it out.
I must have hit a button. I got to get that turned off. But yeah, that's really what it's about. It's just picking out, every time you look in an area, that's what I see. I see little bits of yellow or the red. And when you do this enough, you really will you'll start really learning how to see color. So let's back this out. I've decided I am not going to keep going. I'm going to stop because I can tell I'm starting to make mistakes, and there we go. Oh, it's just going to be beautiful. And you know what's funny is you'd think that this bigger flower would have more detail, but that should go a little bit quicker. I think now that I've spent a lot of time explaining things, when I stream again tomorrow, I can just go ahead and paint, and I'm just going to keep painting until it's done, but probably a couple more hours and it will be finished, and it's going to be beautiful. Shannon, I've got some texture in my background and some visible areas of color transition. How can I fix that area? It's just not as smooth as your background. Thanks. Okay, so here's what you should do, Shannon. Post it and I'll look at it for you, and that way I can kind of blow it up and see what's going on. Although I saw your background, what you have done, and it was absolutely beautiful so far. Probably a lot of it is maybe on some areas the color started drying, but what you can do is Claudette, you're so funny. What you can do is brush water over the background. Just keep brushing it, and it will hopefully start smoothing out any areas that you feel have lines. But let me take a look at it and see what you're talking about, and I'll see what I can help you with on that. Okay, and Shilpy, carpels of magnolia is yellowish and stamens are reddish in color. Ah, interesting. So now I kind of know what you really teach. That's so funny. Okay, so I'm gonna switch. I'm gonna switch back to the front. Boy, it's yeah. Let me see if I can get some more light going on. As I've been painting, it slowly has gotten dark and cloudy, and you can tell it's getting ready to snow. So I know I probably don't look very good right now because the lighting is gone, but I am definitely going to come back tomorrow, and we will keep working on this. And although I'm pretty proud, I'm pretty excited so far how it's turned out, and I can't wait to see what you all have done. Oh, and Shannon, thank you. Oh, sure, yeah, I'll just take a look at it, and we'll see what we can do on that. So unless there are any more questions, I don't know how well you're going to see it. I'm looking, and it's looking a little odd on the screen, but there we are so far where we're at. And then of course, I need to do some details, down there in the leaves, and once we get that green up, and then also working on a little bit more on that stem, but I think it's going to be just spectacular. I can't wait to get it finished. I'm excited. And Shannon, thank you so much, Debbie. It's gorgeous. It is. It's turning out great. Shannon, I want to see yours too. I want to see everybody's. I want to see what you all have come up with, and I'm excited to get this finished. So, Shannon Hicks, back to your football game, so you'll be able to watch that. And Shannon, I will look in a little bit at your background, and we'll see what we can do to get that fixed. So I'm going to call it an evening. It's 4:49 here, so it's about dinner time. This is fun. So hopefully you can join me tomorrow. If not, you can watch the replay. So I'm going to say good evening, everybody, and hopefully I'll see you tomorrow. So bye-bye.